part of Senate Report 93549. It's the Emergency Powers Statutes of 1973. It says, in order to maintain dictatorial control and authorization of the many division agencies of the executive branch, the sitting president must formally declare a national emergency every single year. This has been an ongoing ritual since 1933, according to Senate Report 93549. Once the emergency is declared, the common law is abolished, the Constitution is abolished, and we fall under absolute will of government or public policy. We're under a system of corporate public policy or war powers. All the government needs to continue is to have public opinion on their side. If public opinion can be kept in sufficient degrees on the side of the government, statutes, laws, and regulations, and executive orders can continue to be passed. The Constitution has had no meaning. The Constitution was suspended. It has been for over 80 years. We're not under law. Law has been abolished. It's important to understand that now we are the enemy of the state, which is then going to create the understanding of some of the latest genocide programs we're going to be talking about. But again, the federal and state governments are not real. They are privately owned corporations calling themselves governments. The judges are all privately employed administrators called judges, and the law is nothing more than their corporate regulations called statutes. All laws created by our corporations or our government are private corporate regulations called public law, statutes, codes, and ordinances to conceal the true nature. Americans have been indoctrinated through expert programming, conditioning, prejudice, and patriotism to treat information like this as being ridiculous, absurd, and untrue. And it's time to look around and see what is happening. They have eliminated the family farms, the local stores, placed us into cities, given our industry away to break the unions, issued valueless currency, stolen our gold and silver, raised taxes, stolen our paper currency back, involved us in staged wars, false flags, and given a massive foreclosures of American homes, poisoning our air and our water supply and our food. So we don't have a government. We are in a genocidal program. And I'm going to be pointing out one of the latest documents that we've come across that underscores the genocide that we're in. Again, this is a free download from the top of stopthecrime.net. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will hear more of our reality. But the name of this document is called Population Engineering and the Fight Against Climate Change. You can all read this for yourself, but I'm just going to underscore what it's telling us. First of all, it's important to know that this is now part of what is going to be implemented to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which is fraudulent, fake science. And the authors behind this are authors that not only have bioethic departments in Johns Hopkins University and also the National Institute for Health, or known as NIH. And it's important to know that implants are being used by this as well. And bioethics department that these authors work for means a study of ethical issues emerging from advancements in biology and medicine. And they talk about moral discernment as it relates to medical policies. So what we need to know is what a couple of these authors have said. They have to fight climate change by reducing the population. There are simply too many people, and there will not be enough time to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to near zero or below that they're claiming it must be. Now remember, zero means no people. Zero is an impossibility. Another one of the authors quotes this: barren wombs as cure for our climate catastrophe. In other words, infertility rates must soar. This populations engineering and fight against climate change tells us that climate change is among the most significant moral problems contemporary societies face in terms of its urgency, global expanse, and the multitude of its attending harms. Population plays an important role in determining just how bad climate change will be. Now, they say on page 1 again, threats posed by climate change justify eliminating people. On page 2, I found this horrific, and this is one of the first documents that I've discovered that had any mention of weather warfare. And it was in small font in the footnote of page 2 of this document. So I'm going to read you this footnote. Along with the standard protocol and repertoire of broader policy efforts to fight climate change, which will include reducing consumption, reducing related waste, switching to renewable energy sources, and funding adaptation efforts, etc., is why the silence on population reduction. They say even if population engineering or reduction has been largely overlooked in the climate change debate, unlike its ethological cousin, geoengineering, ethological means a good dramatic device which is characterized as really what's going on. So they're saying that this is characterizing what's really going on with geoengineering, which is of course weather weapons. And again, in that they say that immigration policies also, for example, are often deployed in order to grow, shrink, or stabilize a national population for economic reasons. So what is happening, and we're seeing increased in homelessness right now in Los Angeles, in California, there are over 58,000 homeless people. We're seeing massive migrations in South Africa right now, and in Venezuela, we're seeing millions and millions of people relocating because of the economic hitman in Venezuela with the facts of the economy. And in South Africa, people are fleeing. In fact, it was also just voted that because the white farmers in South Africa operate 72% of the farms, they're going to take those farms with no remuneration. And if it comes to a bloodbath to get the white farmers out of South Africa, that's what will happen. So what we're seeing now are the efforts that are discussed in this document, again entitled Population Engineering and the Fight Against Climate Change. We're hearing and seeing now climate refugees all over the world, and we're seeing that here now in the United States as well. So on page 5 of this document, they talk about global greenhouse gas emissions must decline to near zero or less. Now, the way they say it on page 5, it's confusing, and that's why most people are missing what is really being said, because they tangle us up in words and dates that make it sound like it's so far out that we won't be around by the year 2100. So why do we have to worry that they want greenhouse gas emissions to near zero or less by 2100? But keep in mind, they're accelerating this now by reducing the population. And on page 15, it says Earth cannot sustain larger populations of wealthier individuals. Now, this should mortify all of you that are listening right now, because North America and Europe are listed as wealthier populated areas. And what they're saying, of course, is wealthier societies use more energy, therefore create more greenhouse gas, and we must be reduced. They're saying that fertility reductions are not enough. There needs to be greater efforts towards reducing the global population. And again, they're saying that these justifications are justified because of the morality around the need to save the planet.
Let me jump in and ask you something, Deborah. Now, you and I talked about some of this on our last call, and you brought up to me that I didn't know about. You told me about this Resilient Cities program, this Rockefeller Foundation-funded Resilient Cities program all over the country. And I discovered in my city, yes, there is a Resilient Cities program, which is all about being responsive to really weather catastrophes that we know they will engineer. Have you seen that Deagle.com document that predicts a decline in population of the United States to like 60 or 80 million people, I think by 2025? Have you seen that document?
Yes, I have. Actually, I was on the program and was talking to Dr. Bill about that. We were talking about the ghost cities in China and how the plan is to move over 350 million Chinese villagers and farmers into the ghost cities that were built years ago. They've just had custodial cleanup in these mega cities. They're doing the same thing here in the United States. For those that have noticed, for example, in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, in Hollywood, they're building monster towers that in some instances will house over 5,000 people worth of apartment buildings. There's mixed use down below. Largely, all of these structures are unoccupied. Now, as a business person, you have to ask yourself, how could you build something like that and have it unoccupied? Who is paying for the lack of income and the occupancy rates being what they are? So what we're finding is the plans of climate victims or climate refugees will ultimately find their way into these cities. Now, what these cities are, and we're going to leap into that now, they're thought control cyber cages. What do I mean by that? Because, Sean, this is horrific, and we're talking about resilient cities and what's happening behind the scenes of resilient cities. I'm going to read what's happening in New Orleans right now. And for all of you, you need to understand what has already happened. We're going to get into this. New Orleans implemented a CIA-backed predictive policing technology. It's already been implemented and in complete secrecy in 2012. And not even the city council members knew about this program. Palantir has secretly been using New Orleans to test its predictive policing technology. We're going to talk about this now, and we're going to talk about how this dovetails into the resilient plans that are merging as all of our cities cope with climate disasters. This is how these cities are merging into existence. So here we go. The Palantir program began in 2012 as a partnership between New Orleans police and the Palantir Technologies. Palantir is Palantir, a data mining firm founded with seed money from the CIA's venture capitalist firm. According to interviews and documents, the initiative was essentially a predictive policing program, similar to the Heat List program in Chicago, that purports to predict which people are likely drivers or victims of violence. Predictive policing technology has been, of course, highly controversial wherever it's been implemented, but in New Orleans, the program escaped public notice, partly because Palantir established itself as a philanthropic relationship with the city. And thanks to its philanthropic status, the mayor of New Orleans, who's involved in the strong mayor program model of government, the agreement never passed through public procurement process. Now, I want you to remember, strong mayor model of government. This is in your cities. Your mayors are all involved. Your cities are all incorporated. They do not serve you. They are marching forward with FCC policies now to literally create cyber cages. That's why many people are believing that the FEMA camps are not going to be necessary. They're not going to need to re-educate anyone because they're massively reducing millions and millions of overusers of too much stuff, presumably, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So they're going to be literally cooking our brains. And we're going to talk about that here as soon as we finish with the Volunteer program. But it's police and the Volunteer programs, again, it's data mining. So, and it's policing technologies. And this went unobserved in the city of New Orleans. It's now absolutely in force. And it says that Palantir watches everything you do and predicts what you will do next in order to stop it. As of 2013, Palantir's client list included the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Center for Disease Control, which is a corporation and advocates vaccinations. I'm just telling you that. So the Center for Disease Control partnered, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, and the IRS. And up to 50% of its business is from the public sector. In QTEL, the CIA's venture arm was an early investor. And what we need to understand is that these technologies have now been rolled out and they're planned for your town. So let's talk about how resiliency is now playing a part in what you're going to hear about new infrastructure. When we hear the word infrastructure, we think of road improvement, we think of water accessibility enhancement. Whatever you think of infrastructure, you would never think likely that they would be using frequencies as an infrastructure to literally create, as I said, the thought control cyber cages that we're being placed in for predictive programming, thought control, and for literally jamming our immune systems and our cellular makeup so we cannot survive. All of this is happening now. So they go on to tell us about New Orleans as being an exemplar of resiliency. They say if any city has shown the ability to rebound, it is New Orleans. New Orleans has taken a pummeling, from fires to yellow fever to hurricanes to the Army Corps of Engineers' faulty levees, and it was difficult to imagine, with 80% of the city underwater after Hurricane Katrina and the levee breaches in 2005, how New Orleans could ever survive, much less thrive. So the reverse of what the pummeling with the weather weapons, they're saying that now our cities are thriving. They are not. These are literally mausoleums for all of us. This is how we are going to be exterminated. So it goes on to tell us that it's fitting that New Orleans was picked by the Rockefeller Foundation to be among the first of 33 cities in the Resilient Cities Sentinel Challenge. Being a resilient city will put the city, they say, in a strong position. Rockefeller Foundation President Judith Rodin said, quote, New Orleans is now part of a global network of urban areas focused on building resilience, to share best practices and lead by example for cities. Her foundation has committed over $100 million to the global effort. This is just so far. And to say, as part of the Resilient Cities Network, New Orleans will get help for staffing, technical support, and other resources to create and implement a plan for strengthening the city's infrastructure, technology, and other areas. The Clinton Global Initiative gathered some of the project partners, which not only includes Palantir Technologies, but also the American Institute of Architects and Architecture for Humanity in New York. The Rockefeller Foundation initiative will use data to help cities identify risks, look for ways to use technology, and improve infrastructure. Palantir is using its expertise to develop a resilient dashboard for cities to improve their strategic planning and decide on smartest capital investments. And New Orleans was the first to have access to Palantir's dashboard and will help refine it for other cities. Now, let's talk about what we see right here happening in Northern California and in San Diego and Lake Tahoe and other states across the United States have these plans as well. Because of the fires, they want to implement an early warning system. They are going to put in dozens and dozens of cameras that have the viewing range of 150 miles each. They will be operated with infrared. They will be 24/7, 365, and all the data will be stored through Google on the cloud. They're selling this to us as an advanced fire warning. Of course, we know that they're using weather weapons and directed energy weapons to create the fires that we're experiencing here in California, and weather weapons that you're experiencing elsewhere in the country. So they're going to put cameras everywhere. And I would certainly suggest you look at our latest YouTube. It's called Plan to Burn Up Northern California Exposed. Plan to Burn Up Northern California Exposed. Very important to type in the word exposed, because we have many of those plans that we've talked about, but this would be our latest YouTube. And this is as a result of having attended this meeting here in Northern California just last week. So it's extremely important to understand what is headed for you. Also, we have Rockefeller's Resilient Cities as a YouTube, and it's just diabolical what we're seeing happening right now. So we now have the thought police coming in as part of the Resilient Cities and expanding globally. This is an expansion globally. These are the entrapments. These are so concerned about over the years. This is what we're now seeing. Total mind control and total elimination and ability of self-will. We talked about that in The Cooking of Humanity when we interviewed Barry Trower. Again, a YouTube, The Cooking of Humanity. It's very important to understand what we're going to see as we continue down this road of frequency killing of us. Here are just some of the symptoms. Many people are going to have irregular heartbeat rhythms, sleep pattern interruptions, paranoia, hallucinations, insomnia, illusions, drowsiness or absence of feelings, depression, suicidal feelings, visual distortions, confusion, people can't relax, generally feeling unwell and unhappy, anger, manic behavior, problems with movement, flashes, loss of appetite, small seizures, disturbed orientation, auditory problems, visual hallucinations, inability to make decisions, because they're going to be controlling our minds, sensory problems, sight, touch, and sound, confusion, flickering, flashing lights, dizziness, mania, hypertensity. This is jamming our cells. These frequencies are intended to jam our cells. The FCC is behind the rollout of 5G across the United States. The FCC is a corporation. The corporation is only interested in money and elimination of people. That is what it is, and that's why we are the enemy. I think it's fairly obvious that the laws and regulations that are called statutes affect and control every part of us, and this has been deceptively occurring over many, many, many decades, as we talked about. And we've just been sadly propagandized to the point where we don't understand what's real. The media doesn't even report the correct weather because it's all controlled. We know that. But what we now have is this incarceration, entombment of frequencies. It is a silent weapons system. And in the Cooking of Humanity YouTube that we have up, we're talking about a document that was discovered on the whitehouse.gov website some years ago. And it talks about the use of psychotronic weapons and bandwidth, just what is being discussed right now by the 5G.
Well,